create another project for today. Okay. And we're going to go to, okay, let me close that. Okay, let's create for CSE114 week 13, lab 2. That's what we'll do. Java projects, CSE114 week, bless you, 13, lab 2. Okay, that's what we'll do. Let's try with the simple one, okay? The simple one. What about the radius example, okay? We're gonna do the bad version first. What about we do 2 versions, okay? So that'll be better, so you can compare. So create a new package here. Let's say just version 1, like how we did the inheritance. So version 1 will be without the exceptions. Version 2 will be with the exceptions. So new package and version 2. Okay, 2 versions. So now, for version 1, we're going to create a simple class called circle. New class, let's call that circle, okay? And then you can see circle now belongs to version 1. We're going to do another class called circle in version 2 later on. So let's just have one attribute here. So let's say double and then radius, exactly. Okay, so you got 2 packages, version 1 and version 2. Version 1 here and version 2 here. And now circle is within version 1 to begin with. Okay. So now let's have one constructor here, just doesn't initialize anything. Just say circle here. Let's say just that. Okay, just empty. So you can put a comment here. You can say radius will have the default value 0.0 because it's a double. Okay. Let's have one mutator method here. Let's say void set radius and then let's say double radius or r, doesn't matter. So in case the name clashes, you will say this dot radius equals radius. Okay. And then let's have one accessor. Let's say double get area, which does not require any further inputs. We just need a radius. So now you can say return, let's say radius. So it's a pi r square. So radius times, let's say 3.14. That'll be enough. Okay, that's it. Very simple class. Okay, so now let's do a class that makes use of circle. Okay, so now we'll do inside version 1, we're gonna have class. Let's call that circle tester. And make sure you have a main method there. You can just click on here and then say finish. Okay, so we got circle tester here. We got a main method here. So now let's just do the following. Let's say we do circle and c equals new circle. Okay, that's fine. So now the c.radius will simply be 0, the default value. Okay, that's what we know about. So now let's say we do c.set radius. So now if we try to do -10, for example, let's say, and we'd say system.out.println. So let's say c.get area. Okay, let's make it a little bit more meaningful. You can say area of circle is something like that, and plus. Okay, let's say that's what we have. Let's have a look and see what the printout is. Okay, what's going to be the output in this case, based on what we have typed so far? Remember, in the circle here, we always set the radius to be the radius, right? That's intentional, but let's live with that for now. So you can see whenever we set the radius, whatever value you got will be set to as the new radius, and then you get the area from there. So now circle tester, if you run it, it's going to tell you that the area of circle is 314, because -10 times -10 will be 100, times 3.14 will give you 314. Apparently this output is wrong, because you should not have a circle with negative radius. So there's something wrong here, because we should have got some error message to the user, at least. So let's change back our circle here. So the best we could do without exception was to print out something to the console, right? So let's do that. We say if the radius happens to be negative, in this case, we're going to system.out print something to the console. You can say error negative radius. Okay. Otherwise, we will set the radius accordingly. Okay, it's if then else. It's a typical use of if then else. This will improve the matter a little bit. Let's see how, but it's still not perfect. Let's see. 0. So let's see now. If we do this, we still print 2 lines here, although we do have the error message here saying error negative radius, but we still say the area of circle is 0.0, which doesn't make sense really.
Why don't they also like touch the get accessor method?
What do you mean?
Like, you know,
oh, you mean to also say that?
Yeah, same thing.
In some way, yeah, that's also will work, but in some way you're repeating the code, like keep checking that. That's certainly another possibility. Okay, now let me illustrate my point. So let me put a breakpoint over here. Okay, let me put it here. Put a breakpoint here. So right before we set the radius. Okay, and then if you go run debug as Java application. Okay, so now here is a set radius minus 10. Okay, if you go into it, so you will see that. So now we are inside the set radius method. And now when we say this, when we enter this branch here, that means there's some error there. Okay, so we'll print something to the console as we know. If you do that, you're going to skip the else branch. Okay, you can see in the console now we already have the output error negative radius. Presumably, if there's an error in your software, you should stop executing the software as soon as possible, immediately, basically. However, if you go on with the execution here, you will see that you will still execute this line here, even though there was an error in line number 6. Right? So that's my point. Okay. So this solution definitely is slightly better than before when we did no error checking, but it's not good enough. Okay. We want a solution such that as soon as you got some error here, it's going to stop you immediately. And also, they should be somehow made very explicit to you that whenever you're trying to call the set radius method, there might be some error there. So you'll be forced to somehow deal with the error. Okay, that's kind of the idea. You can refer back to the lecture notes. So let me show you how to do that. Okay, so this is the simplest example you can have for exception. So let's see how we can do it. Okay, so now let's go to version 2. So that's version 1. So 2 points here. First of all, we need to have some error message somehow. We need that. But just simply printing that to the console would not be good enough because you wouldn't stop the next line after the error to be executed. We want it to be stopped. Okay, that's the point. So let's go back to Package Explorer here. If you go under version 2, let's just create new and then class. Okay, again, we get a circle class. Okay, just got a different version of circle. Okay, just we're gonna read the let me be a little bit lazy. If you go to the previous version of radius here, actually before I do that, let me show you one thing. Before we do that, always step 1. So now we're going to use the version with exception. Always step 1. Think about what kind of error you want to have. In this case, the error is something like a negative radius error. Okay, so we're going to create a new class here. Okay, that's specific to exception. So we have a class here. So we would say you can make up the name yourself. So in this case, we can say negative radius, and the Java convention is every time you would say describe the error and then have exception at the end. So you would say negative radius exception. Okay, that's a naming convention here. You wouldn't simply say negative radius. You want to say negative radius exception. Okay, just a naming convention in Java. And now, always the superclass, which means the class this class extends, will be exception. Okay, exception is like a class in Java. That's always the case. Okay, so 2 things new here. When you want to create a new kind of error, always put exception at the end of the name. That's convention. Second thing, always put the superclass of the class as exception. Okay, if you say finish, so now you have one class here in version 2 package there. So you can see negative radius exception, okay? And that extends exception. And the thing we would like to do is to somehow just declare the constructor for this exception here. So you would say negative exception here, and then we're going to take some message here. So this is always the case, so you'll get used to it, okay? And the way we're going to do that is by calling the constructor from the exception, the one we inherited, okay? So you will simply super S. That's all you got to do, okay? Yeah, it might seem a little bit arbitrary to you from line number 4 to line number 6, but just the way people define that. Okay, you just want to reuse the code from the exception. Okay, I wouldn't have you write this actually in the exam. I might say, just declare the type. That wouldn't be so critical.
So when you say declare the type, is it going to be just negative radius?
Yes, exactly. Yeah, just say the class. You can. Yeah. Yes. Okay, very good. So now let's go back to our circle class. So now let's see what's going to change. Again, we still have our attributes here. So let's say radius, the same as before. And we also have our empty constructor here. So let's say circle, and it's simply, so you would say radius will have the default value 0. Okay. So now, what's going to change would be the mutator. Okay, so we're going to say things like this. Void set radius. Let me just write out the old version first, and I'll show you how to change that. Yeah, so set radius. So here you would have double radius. So what we used to say was if the radius is less than 0, then we're going to print some error message here. System.out.println. Then you would say error negative radius. Else, you're going to say radius, this.radius is equal to radius, semicolon. That's what we used to say. Okay, now I'm going to show you how to change this to use exception. Two things here. First of all, you're trying to declare that this method here might throw some kind of exception objects at runtime. That's the first thing you got to declare. Okay, the way to say that in Java is to say as part of the signature of this method here. So this is so-called a signature. Yeah. So you're gonna say throws. Okay, that's a new keyword. Throws. And we're gonna use the negative radius exception over here. You can put that in the second line, that's fine. So now this highlighted part here now becomes the new signature for the set radius method. So now you have a return type being void, you have the name of the method being set radius, you have one parameter radius of type double, and also it might abnormally throws some negative radius exception in the exceptional circumstance. Okay, that's the first thing you do. Okay, so now it say this method here might throw the exception, but under what circumstances will we throw the exception? It is when the radius is actually negative, right? Actually, the name of the exception suggests that it should be the case. So now, yeah, let me show you actually the slightly longer version of throwing the exception, and I'll show you the shorter one. I'll show you both. So think about this. Whenever the erroneous circumstances occur, you're actually going to throw the exception. So now we're going to say declare the exception just like normal. Negative radius exception. Let's say some exception here is equal to new. Just create a normal object like create a new object like normal. And then negative radius exception. And then you're going to have some error message here. You can say negative radius. Okay, so let me separate it into two lines so it's easier for you to read. Okay, so this line should be no surprise to you. You're just creating a new object of type negative radius exception. Okay, you're creating an exception object of type negative radius exception, and then you're going to say throw E. And that's it. Okay, so this is longer version we have. Okay, so somehow you're over here, to be more precise, over here on the right hand side of the assignments in line number 14, we are creating a new negative radius exception objects, and then we let this reference variable here called E point to there, okay, and then we throw E. Okay, that's what we did. You could have simplified this into one line, because somehow you don't really need an intermediate variable E over here. You can simply throw the objects without having another reference variable pointing to it. So that's sort of the point. So version 2, so that's what you could have done. So let me put this into comments and show you another way of doing it. So here you can say longer version create the exception object first and throw it. Okay, that's the longer version. I'm going to show you the shorter version. So the shorter version is throw a new exception objects directly. Okay, how do we do that? As I explained in the class, you can simply say throw, and throw is not expecting some exception objects. So you can simply use the new expression here. Say that. That's what you can do. Okay? So you can see this part here is exactly the right-hand side of the assignment to E before. But now we just don't have that intermediate variable E to store the exception. We don't have that. We can just use the new keyword here. I think that's maybe something you want to get used to. And you might find this expression here useful for your assignment too. Okay, just an aside, just to show you more about this new expression here. Let's go back to our previous lab, okay, just temporarily. Let me show you how to use a new expression quickly. If you go to lab 1 for this week, let's say you go to the bank tester, for example. Okay, let me show you something here. You see, we used to have this. Let me show you the one that's here, maybe. Okay, let me show you here. Which one should I show you? I think the one I would like to show you is this, okay? Why don't I just create a new bank tester, okay? Just in lab 1, okay? Create a new class here. Just call that bank tester 2, okay? If you do that, and now we have the main method there. Okay, I'm going to show you quickly. So now let's say we would like to have the following. Let's say account ACC1 is equal to new account with the ID 34, for example. And then you would say ACC1 dot set balance 1500. Okay. Account ACC2 is equal to new account 68. Okay, and then ACC2 dot set balance like that. Okay, and then let's have one clients here. So clients C1 is equal to new clients, and let's say he has a name. Let's say Jim Davis. Okay, so now what you can do is C1 dot add account ACC1, C2 dot add account. Well, sorry, C1 dot add account. C1 dot add account ACC2. That's one way of doing it, right? Okay, let me show you another way of doing it. So now what you could have done was, let's just have another client here. So you can have clients C2 here, new clients, let's say a different person, let's say Jeremy Gibbons. Okay, so now what I can do now is to say C2 dot add account. So now here we are expecting some account objects. So rather than passing ACC1, what I could say is new account. And then I can say the ID would be, for example, 57. Doesn't matter. That's what I can do. You see, it compiles. That's what you can do. So rather than having ACC1 point to some object here and then use ACC1 over here, well, what I'm trying to do is I simply use a new expression here. Okay, that's one way of doing it. Exactly, yeah, you don't need the intermediate variables. So it really depends on your need. Okay, if you don't find it necessary, feel free to use this. And now, how do I set a balance? That's the problem, right? So now what you can do is you can say C2 dot account, which is an array. And now I know that that account should be in position 0. I can say set balance, let's say 2500. Okay, so study this example to see how it works. Okay, let me do another one for you. I can say C2 dot add another account. So here I can say new account, for example, 78. And now I can say C2 dot accounts at position 1 dot set balance, let's say 3000. Okay, so this actually shows you how you can use a new expression, not just in the exception scenario, but in normal objects you can also do that. Okay, it's mainly for convenience, really. You don't need any intermediate variables to store the objects. You can just create the objects directly and pass that as the arguments. Okay, that's just some digression, just to show you how to use a new expression. Okay, let's go back to where we were. Okay, let me close that. So where we were was in this set radius method here. So now we say throw new negative radius exception. So these are the two things that are new. First of all, we'd say the set radius method now throws negative radius exception. It may or may not at runtime. In the case where radius is smaller than 0, it's going to throw a new negative radius exception. So watch the difference here. One is throws, the other one is throw, right? It's like this one is like a verb to say, well, throw this, do it. And then this one to say, well, it might throw, it may or may not, like part of its behavior, it's different. That's why they say throws and throw. Okay, so that's about it for circle. So now let's see how the circle tester is going to change. Okay, let me just close all the files, otherwise I'll get confused. So now go back to version 2 and create a circle tester. Okay, so if you say circle tester and then put a main method there. Okay, and now let me just, I don't like this empty line here. Okay, so now let's do something, let's do almost the identical thing, but let's see. So when you say circle C is equal to new circle here, okay, so now let's see, let's watch the following. When you say C dot set radius, and let's say, for example, -10, okay, first of all, have a look at this. Somehow it doesn't compile. Remember, if you go back to the, let me just open the class again. Yeah, let me show you one thing first. So you can see set radius here takes a double value. -10 is apparently a double. No problem with that. But somehow it still doesn't compile. Okay, if you go move your mouse over the red line here, it says that unhandled exception type, negative radius exception. Well, hopefully that explains something to you. Okay, it is because as part of the signature of set radius, here it says that the set radius is going to throw such an error at the runtime, but you as a user of the method has not handled that properly yet. So somehow Java compiler will force you to handle that. Okay, so there are two ways for you to handle that. Two ways. Either you can say the main method here also throws that negative radius exception. That's approach one. There are two ways to handle this. Either you can say, well, for this current method here, which is using the set radius method, I'm not going to handle that. I'm not going to do the try and catch block to handle that. I'm actually going to let whoever is going to call the main method to handle that. So I'm throwing the ball to someone else. Okay, that's one way of doing it. But in this case, we don't want to do it. In this case, we would like to try the second way. Okay, what we like to do is do the following: to wrap this line here within a try and catch block. So I think if you simply say try and type control space, the eclipse is going to give you some skeleton for try and catch block. If you try that, right, put a line here, and now for catch, you have to specify the kind of exception you're expecting. Okay, so you would say negative radius exception. I just say declare that to be E. And now system.out.println E. Okay. So now you can see the advantage of using an exception here, because now when you do c.setRadius minus 10, okay, or any value there, you will be forced to handle that potential error explicitly. Okay. So now we're going to try actually. What's going to happen is, if you happen to give, let's say after this line here, let me do another line here, system.out.println. Let's say now c.area of circle plus c.get area. Oh, I haven't defined that yet, sorry. So if you go back to circle here, let's do that quickly. I forgot to do that. So double here and get area and returned radius times 3.14. Okay, if you go back to circle tester here, you would say c.get area. Okay, so now you can see we are wrapping the two lines within the try block. So what's going to happen is, when we are going to try executing c.setRadius minus 10, if the radius, if the negative radius exception is thrown from the method, then we're actually going to enter this catch block directly, rather than continuing to execute these print statements. That's what's going to happen. So somehow we break the normal flow of execution. In the previous version, even though the error message was printed in the console, we'll still continue to print the area. So apparently we are making some improvement here. So let me show you how. So let's do the following. So if you put a breakpoint over here, right before we set a radius here, if you say run debug as Java application, okay? If you do that, if you step into it, let's say, you would see now we are in the setRadius method version 2. And now you can see the radius value currently is simply minus 10. Okay, it's negative. So now if you step over, you can see now we're going to execute this line here, which is to throw the new negative radius exception objects, right? If you execute that, okay, so now you can see we did not execute this line of print statement anymore. We just directly went to the catch block. Okay, that's something Java will handle for you at the runtime, as long as you use the right exception mechanism. Okay, so now that means we're going to go to system.out.println the exception, and in this case, it's going to print something like this. It's going to tell you that we are throwing some exception whose name is negative radius exception, and this is whatever message you actually pass to the exception when you first created that. Okay, let's try another example here. What if I pass some valid value? What if I say 10 over here? Okay, so now let's run debug as Java application. Okay, let's try. Step into it. So now radius is now 10. So it is certainly not negative. So that means we're going to the other branch, which will set the radius properly. In this case, no exception has been thrown from this method here. So that means we can safely go from this line here to this line here, okay, without being broken. Okay, so now we're going to print area of circle 314 correctly. Okay, so it's either that we throw the exception when we got a negative radius, or we just print out the area. Either one, but not both. Any questions? No? If you're confusing, so it's recorded, watch the video again. Okay, so I would say that's the simplest example I can give to you for using exceptions. Certainly compare the two versions and try to play with the code. I think it's certainly not that difficult, I would say. Yeah, the more difficult things will come next Monday and Friday. So don't think this is difficult. Yeah, if that can make you feel better. But still no comparison to your physics class, I think. Huh?
We have studied this for our
You mean Friday?
quiz.
You mean this Friday?
Yeah.
No, you don't have to.
What do we have to study then?
What do you have to study?
Polymorphism and dynamic binding.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's what you're gonna study. But for next Friday, the last quiz for the class for the course, you gotta study this. Next Friday.
This is the last.
Yeah, quiz number 10. Yeah, it's gonna be quiz number 10 next Friday. Yeah. Okay, so that's about it for this example. So let's do one more. Okay, one more. Slightly more sophisticated, slightly more, but not too much. Okay. So let's do the following. So let's go to, again, back to our Java perspective and go to Package Explorer. Okay, let's start with version 1. Okay, let's create a class called, I think I got account, bank, and bank tester. Okay, so let's say we do a class called account. Okay, if you do account class, you know what, to actually help you organize your project better, how about we do this? So please, sorry, just delete the account class for now. I'm going to make the package name more readable for you. So right click on version 1 and say refactor and rename. What about we say that it's circle version 1, okay? And then say continue here. And can similarly rename version 2 here, right click, and then go for refactor. And you can say circle version 2. Okay, so you don't get confused between the two examples. Okay, so now create a new package here. Right click, and then say new package. So now what about we say bank version 1. Okay, and then do another package here, bank version 2. New package, bank version 2. Okay, so you can see you got two examples, each one of them got two versions. So it's easier for you to organize, the examples. Okay, let's try with version 1 without the exceptions. If you go to version 1 here, so let's say new and class. Let's create a class called account. Okay, let me just close all the circle classes here. Okay, you got account, and also we create another class called bank. Okay, and another one. So what about, rather than calling that bank tester, let's call it bank application. Okay, in the sense that you also got a main method, so all the execution will start from there. So you would say bank app, for example. Okay, so now let's go to account class. Let's make it simple here. So you can say we have one attribute here, double balance, the balance of the account. And then we're gonna have some, that's an empty constructor. Yeah, let's just make it simple. So you have account here. Okay, so that means balance, I need to maximize this. Balance will has the default value 0. Okay, so now let's do the following. Let's create two mutator methods. Okay, what about first one would be deposit. Void deposit some amount. I just say amount here. Okay, so now we want to make sure you do not have scenario where you try to deposit -10 or -100, right? It's always got to be a positive number. So you would say things like, if the amount is negative, you're going to print some error. Okay, you say system.out.println. So you can say error deposit amount negative. Oh, actually negative. That makes more sense. Negative deposit amount. Okay, otherwise, we're going to increment the balance accordingly. Balance plus equal amount. Okay? Yeah, very straightforward. Okay, let's do withdraw. Withdraw is going to be slightly more sophisticated. Okay, slightly more. Okay, they're going to have void withdraw, also some amount. Okay, so we're going to say if not only that, the amount should be let's see. So in the case where we have to print the error, not only that, the amount can be negative, but also if the amount is going to cause the balance to go negative, then we should also print an error. Okay? So how do we specify that? So it's either this or that, we're going to print an error. So we're going to say balance minus amount, it will give us negative. Okay, so either this or that. Okay, either this or that. Okay. Then we're going to print out the error. So let me just copy this line here. So we're going to say error. You can just say invalid withdraw amount. Okay, for now. Otherwise, we're going to update the balance accordingly. So minus equal amount. Good so far? Okay. So now, let's go to the bank. Okay. So now in the bank, we're actually going to have an array of accounts, right? So let's say in the bank, we're going to have account array. Let's call that accounts. Also, we have the integer, the number of accounts as usual. And then we have our empty constructor. Or maybe not empty. So we just initialize that array to be some certain size. So you would say bank. Over here, you would say accounts equals new account array. What about just say 5? Doesn't matter. Okay. So now we're going to have deposit and withdraw as well, but at the bank level. Okay. So now let's see the following. So for the account, maybe we should add an ID here. Okay, let me do it now. So you can say integer ID in the account. That's something I forgot. And now in the constructor here, I can say integer ID. So I can say this.id equals ID. That's actually should be always the case. You know, while you're developing your class, you can always change your mind to actually change the signature. That's absolutely fine. Okay, so now you have an account which takes ID, and now we go back to bank. So now let's do the following. So let's have the normal mutative method here. Void add account. It's going to add an account object here, ACC. So now we're going to have accounts, number of accounts is assigned to ACC, and the number of accounts will be incremented by 1. Okay, just what we did before. And then let's see, we have some deposit and withdraw. Let me just do the withdraw for now. Okay, the deposit will be very similar. So let's say we have void withdraw. Let's say we want to withdraw some amount from some account, because you can see somehow this bank here has many accounts. So we want to identify which account we would like to withdraw the money from. So you would say we would like to withdraw from the account with ID, and also we would like to withdraw this much amount. Okay, that's what we'll do. And what you got to do is to identify the account inside the bank. So you need a for loop. So you say for integer I equals 0, I less than the number of accounts I plus plus. And then you would say accounts at position I, which will give you an account objects. And now you will simply call the withdraw. Oh, sorry, not here. Let me do it again. Okay. Somehow you want to make sure you only withdraw the account that's identified by ID. Okay, so you got to do the following. You're going to say if the account I'm looking at has the ID that matches the ID I'm looking for. Okay, so this ID here is the attributes from the account class. And this ID here is the ID in the parameter. So don't get confused. Okay, I just choose the same name. Okay, just for convenience. If we find the matching accounts, and then we got to do the following, we're going to withdraw from there. Accounts I dot withdraw amount. Okay, so that means if somehow we give some negative amount over there, there will be some error printed. There will be. Okay. Okay. So let's do something else. So let's go back to our bank application here. So now for bank application, let's say we simply have, no, forget the main method. So do a main method here. So you can say bank B equals new bank, which will give us an empty bank. So let's see, we do the following. Let's do B dot, why don't we use the new expression that we just learned? Add account. So you can say new account ID. What about just 34? Okay. Now, what I would like to do is to say B dot withdraw. Okay. Well, I want to withdraw 34, account 34 with $1,000. Apparently, this would not be allowed because after I created this new account here with ID 34, the initial balance is simply 0. So that's why I cannot withdraw $1,000 from there. Okay, that's for sure, right? So I would expect some error message to be printed out from here. I would expect. Okay. However, I didn't realize that, so I still say system.out.println. I can now go to say b.accounts, go to the first one, dot balance. Okay, kind of similar issue here. So if there is an error from this line here, then this line should not be printed anymore. Okay, because this line should be printed only when everything goes all right. Okay, so let's see what we have. Okay. What about we just be a little bit more meaningful here? You can say account 34 has balance like that. Okay. So now let's see what happens. So put a breakpoint over here. Okay. And then we're gonna say run debug as Java application. So now we are here. So let's step into the withdraw method in the bank. If you step into it, so now we are now in the withdrawal of bank. So now let's go through it. The number of accounts currently is simply just 1. That makes sense. So if you go here, and the first account matches the ID, so now the withdraw that's going to be called will be the withdraw in account. If you go into it, you will see that we're going to check the following error condition. Okay, apparently you can see currently the balance will be 0 and the amount is 1,000. So that will actually make it negative. So that means this will be true. And true or anything will just be true. Right? So that's going to make the error condition true. If you go further, that means we're going to print out some error from this method here. Right? If you do that, you can see you already got the printout from the console. Okay, and now once you have done that, you can see that you will still print out this line here, even though there has been an error printed out from line number 7. Okay, you can see now after that this is the output you have, which does not make sense. First of all, it tells you that there was an error because of invalid withdrawal amount, but it still tells you that account 34 has balance 0.0. So these two lines should be either one, but not both. Okay, that's the point. How do we solve that? We're going to use exceptions in Java to make sure we enforce only exactly one of the lines to be output. How do we do that? Let's see. Follow exactly the same steps as before. So now let's go back to Package Explorer here for version 2 of bank. So first of all, let's create a new kind of error for deposit and withdrawal. What about we say class here, and we can say invalid transaction, let's say. Transaction exception, yes, follow the naming convention there. And then the superclass should be exception. Okay, or we can keep the object there, and then once you create a class, you can say invalid transaction exception extends exception. That will also do. Okay, finish. And now we're going to declare the constructor here. Invalid, and then you're going to put some message here, string s. And now you're going to call the version from the constructor, super s. Okay, that's it. That's the first step. Create a new kind of error called invalid transaction exception. Step number 2, go to the routine where the exceptional behavior might occur, and then declare that as part of the signature. Okay, so now let's go back to our package explorer here. So now let's create a new bank class. So that's in version 2. Sorry, account. I meant to say account. Account here. Okay, account here. And let me be a little bit lazy here. So if I just use the previous version here, just copy from the public class account to the end, and then I'm going to change things. Okay, now once you copy that, go to the version 2 account and highlight this part and paste. And I'm going to change things over here. Okay, we still have these two attributes here. We still have the same constructor here. So now for deposit, because now we may have some exceptional circumstance over here when the amount is negative. So as part of the signature, we're going to say throws invalid transaction exception. Okay, first step. And then when the error condition does satisfy, we have to throw the exception objects. Okay, so here you can simply say throw new invalid transaction exception, and with some message here, you can just copy the previous message there. Okay, you can simply say negative deposit amount. Okay, so no print statement anymore. Okay, so that's for deposit. And we do the same thing for withdrawal. Okay, so it's really up to you if you want to put the throws in the second line or just put it like that. Completely up to you. Okay, let's do the same for withdrawal. So now withdrawal may also throws invalid transaction exception here. So now under this circumstance, we're going to throw the new exception. So we're going to say throw new invalid transaction exception here, and let's copy and paste, cut and paste the error message here. Okay, invalid withdrawal amount. Okay, so far so good. Exactly the same steps as before. Okay. Okay, now let's go to the next level, which is the bank. Okay, if you go back to the package explorer here, and let's create a new class, bank version 2. Create a new class there called bank. Okay, so now if you create a new class called bank, and now I'm going to again copy and paste the code, just starting from the public, go back to version 1, starting from public until the end, copy that, close everything, and go to the bank in version 2. Highlight this and paste. Okay. Okay, somehow it puts the version 1 account, so don't just delete that. Okay, it's gonna cause you trouble. Okay, let's see. Very good. So far so good. Okay, you can see now the only line that gives you complaint is where you're trying to use accounts.withdraw. It's gonna say similar thing on unhandled exception, right? Like unhandled negative radius exception. Similar. Okay, that's exactly the point. So now, as I said before, you got two options here. Either you can say you can handle this by using a try and catch block, or you can simply say throws that exception to throw the ball to whoever is using this. Okay, let me show you this option here. Okay, I'm gonna show you why it's actually better choice here. Throws invalid transaction exception. So now it compiles. You can see here we don't have any try and catch block, which means if somehow we give a negative amount over here, it is going to throw the invalid transaction object to whoever is using this method here. Okay, let me show you who that is. Okay, so now let's do another bank app plus bank application there and put a main method there. Okay, like that. Let me just slightly modify the code a little bit. Okay, just make it more interesting. Okay, so now let's say we have the following. Let's say we have bank B is equal to new bank. Okay, so now in this case, let's say we're trying to read some input from the user. Okay, so you can say system.out.println. So enter and amount to, just maximize this, to withdraw. Okay. First of all, let's b.add account new account. Let's say some 34. Okay, just ID 34. Okay, let's say we have some initial balance for the account. So you can say b.accounts add. So that's the first account dot deposit. Let's say we deposit, let's say $200 into it. Okay. So you can see already we got some problem here. Unhandled exception type, invalid transaction exception. It's simply because if you go back to your account class over there, you can see as part of the signature for deposit, you actually got invalid transaction exception that might be thrown. That's why you'll be forced to handle that. Okay, we'll do that in a moment. Let's go back here. And then now we're going to read some input from the user. Okay, I will handle line number 7 in a moment. So now we're going to have scanner input is equal to new scanner here system.in. Okay, so now we're going to say input, let's say double amount equals input dot next double. Okay, let's say something we're going to read. Okay, so now we're going to say the following. So we're going to do b dot accounts 0 dot withdraw. Let's say we try to withdraw $100 or $300, doesn't matter. Let's say 100 first. Okay, again, when you look at this, again, you cannot compile. Because if you look at the error message here, unhandled exception type, invalid transaction exception. Again, it's because if you go to the account class here, you can see as part of the signature of withdraw, it throws invalid transaction exception. So you will be forced to do it. Okay, handle that. Okay, so now we want to handle here because somehow the user, since the user are passing to you the inputs, the value, so you really want to handle that and tell the user, no, you actually enter some negative value, so you should really enter again. things like that. Okay, so what we're going to do is the following. We're going to wrap these two lines into some try and catch block. Okay, that's what we're going to do. So before I do that, let me do the following. So system.out.println after the deposit, you can say after depositing 200, balance is, and now you can say b dot accounts I dot balance. Okay, just print out what the balance is. Sorry, 0, not I. Okay, let's do another line here. Copy that. So now after withdraw, we're going to print out the balance as well. So you say after withdrawing $100.
Why have 200 when you have the amount? I'm just trying to withdraw the amount.
You're absolutely correct. Thank you very much. Yes, you're absolutely right. Yes. After withdrawing, so now I'm going to say amount. Okay, that's what you're going to write. Okay, so somehow amount here. Okay, very good. Okay, so now we're going to wrap everything into a try and catch block. Let's see how we can do that. Okay, if you simply type try and control space, it's going to be try and catch over here. We're going to cut this block of code and simply paste that within the try block. Okay, and the exception we might get is the invalid transaction exception. Invalid transaction exception, just E here. And now we're going to print system.out.println E. Okay, everything compiles now. And now we actually got something interesting to see. Okay, we'll see one by one. You can see the first method call we do that might have an invalid transaction exception is in line number 11, right? Because in line number 11, if we pass some negative value to deposit, it's going to give us some exception. In this case, we only give 200. So that one's fine. But we can try that. For example, if somehow we make a typo, let's say we say minus 200. If you do this, put a breakpoint here, and you say run debug as Java application. Okay, now we stop here, over here, and now you step into it, and now you're in the deposit of the account. Okay, so now the amount you want to withdraw is deposit was simply 200 minus 200. So that means you would go into this block here, and then you will throw the invalid transaction exception. Step over. That's why you would go directly to the catch block. You see, we used to be here, right? Because the exception was thrown. So we skip the rest of the lines in the try block and go directly to the catch block. So somehow the normal flow of execution is interrupted. Okay, that's a very important thing to note. That's sort of the meaning for try and catch block. Okay, so now in this case, we're going to print out invalid transaction exception negative deposit amount. Okay, let's try another example here. You can put this into comments here, and let's try another one. You can say b dot accounts position 0 dot deposit. What about 200 here? Okay, if you do 200 here, so now let's run again. Run debug as Java application. So now if you step into it, so now this time here, the amount is simply positive. Okay, so we're going to go to the else branch, and we're going to update the balance properly. Okay, if you do that, so now that's why you actually go to the next line in the try block rather than going to the catch block. So the normal flow of execution was not interrupted this time. So now let's go on. So now we're going to execute this line here. You would say after depositing 200, the balance is now 200. That makes sense. And then let's go on. So now we create our scanner, and now it's going to read some amount to withdraw. So what about we do this? What about 400? You got 200 in the balance, but you want to withdraw 400. Okay, enter here. So now we're going to withdraw 400. So if you step into it, so now you can see now you're in the withdraw method in account. So now amount is actually 400. 400 less than 0 is actually false. However, balance currently is 200. 200 minus 400 less than 0 is actually true. So false or true will give you true. Okay, that means the error condition is met. If you step into it, so it's going to throw the invalid transaction exception. If you do that, you can see the exception was thrown from this line here. That is why the next line in line number 18 was not executed. So it was interrupted again. So it will actually just go to the catch block. And this time, it's going to print out saying invalid transaction exception, invalid withdrawal amount. Okay? And then it's going to print it out and terminate the program. Okay, so let me stop that. Let me try it one more time. One more. So now let's try the one without any exception. Okay. I think there's one thing I forgot to print out here. Can we just copy this line here to say enter an amount to deposit? Okay, right before we read the double. Okay. So now let's just run it without debugging it. If you run it, enter the amount to, sorry, let me see again. Enter an amount to withdraw. Oh, sorry. Actually, I did enter that already. So, sorry, delete this line. So, that's not necessary. Do it again. So now enter an amount to withdraw. As it currently is 200, I would like to withdraw 199, which should be allowed, right? Because the balance will just be 1 afterwards.
200 is enough.
Yeah, exactly. It's enough. That's sufficient. And it will tell you that after withdrawing 199, the balance will be 1. And this time we don't see any exception. Okay. Okay, any questions so far from the two examples? Okay, so I don't think they are very complicated, but they follow similar steps over here. Okay, study them, and then they won't be in Friday's quiz, but they will be in next Friday's quiz. Okay, so if you have no questions, then you're free to go. That's it.